This video dives into the chilling world of true crime. Subscribe now for more stories that haunt the night. The autumn leaves swirled across the cracked sidewalks of Indianapolis, Indiana. It was July 1965, and Sylvia Likens, a 16-year-old with soft brown hair and a shy smile that hid a world of dreams, stepped out of a dusty car with her 15-year-old sister, Jenny, their suitcases light but heavy with hope. The sisters, daughters of carnival workers Lester and Betty Likens, had arrived at the home of Gertrude Baniski, a frail-looking mother of 7 who had agreed to care for them while their parents traveled the Midwest, chasing the fleeting lights of fairgrounds. Sylvia, with her gentle eyes and knack for singing, carried a small notebook filled with doodles and song lyrics, her heart set on a future beyond the transient life of carnivals, maybe a teacher or a nurse, something steady. Jenny, polio-weakened but fierce in spirit, clung to her sister's hand as they crossed the threshold of the Baniszewski home, a sagging 2-story house at East New York Street. Its peeling paint and cluttered rooms a far cry from the warmth they'd known. Gertrude, 37, with sunken cheeks and a cigarette always burning, greeted them with a thin smile, her voice promising care, but her eyes cold. Calculating the $20 weekly payment from the Likenses as a lifeline for her struggling household. The first weeks passed in a haze of adjustment, Sylvia and Jenny settling into the cramped upstairs bedroom shared with Gertrude's children. Paula, 17, pregnant and sharp-tongued. Stephanie, 15, quick to follow her mother's lead, and younger ones like Johnny, 13, and Shirley, 10, who darted through the chaos of a home stretched thin by poverty. Sylvia helped with chores, washing dishes in the dimly lit kitchen, her laughter mingling with the radio's static as she taught the younger kids games like hopscotch in the backyard. Jenny, her leg brace clicking softly, stayed close, sensing Gertrude's mood swings, the way her voice turned sharp when the money from Lester arrived late. The house, with its bare walls and threadbare furniture, held a tension Sylvia tried to ignore, singing hymns to calm the younger children during Gertrude's rants about bills and food shortages. But by mid-August, the air shifted, Gertrude's frustration boiling over when a payment check bounced, her gaunt face twisting as she slapped Sylvia across the cheek for eating too much, the first spark of a cruelty that would consume the house. The abuse began subtly, Gertrude's punishments cloaked in discipline. Sylvia sent to bed without supper, forced to scrub floors late into the night, her body aching but her spirit clinging to hope. Jenny watched, helpless, as Gertrude's anger zeroed in on Sylvia, her beauty and kindness seeming to fuel the older woman's rage. By September, the house became a prison, Sylvia the target of Gertrude's venom, her children and neighborhood kids drawn into the escalating torment like moths to a flame. Paula, heavy with pregnancy, joined her mother, accusing Sylvia of stealing food, her slaps landing harder each day. Gertrude, fueled by prescription pills and cheap liquor, began to spin lies about Sylvia, calling her a prostitute, a liar, a burden who'd ruin them all. The basement, a dank concrete space with a single bulb and a dirt floor, became Sylvia's punishment cell, Gertrude dragging her down the creaky stairs for lessons that left bruises blooming on her arms and legs. Jenny whispered warnings, urging Sylvia to stay quiet. But Sylvia's defiance, her refusal to cry, her soft singing even in pain, only deepened Gertrude's wrath. By October, the abuse turned to torture, the house a crucible of horror where cruelty became routine. Gertrude, her eyes glassy, beat Sylvia with a curtain rod, the metal biting into her skin, leaving welts that turned to open sores. Paula and Stephanie joined in, their fists and feet striking Sylvia's body as she curled up, protecting her face, her voice pleading for mercy that never came. Neighborhood kids. Ricky Hobbs, 17, a troubled teen drawn to Gertrude's authority. Coy Hubbard, 15, Stephanie's boyfriend, and even younger ones like Johnny were invited to the basement, egged on to practice on Sylvia. Their punches a twisted game. Gertrude, chain smoking on a folding chair, orchestrated the nightmare, burning Sylvia's fingers with matches when she talked back, her screams echoing off the concrete walls. The kids, some barely 10, watched or joined in, their laughter chilling as Sylvia's body weakened, her once bright eyes dulling with hunger and pain. Jenny, forced to watch, sobbed quietly, her brace keeping her from running for help, her heart breaking as Sylvia whispered at night, "We'll get out, Jenny, I promise." The basement became Sylvia's world, where a mattress on the cold floor, her only bed, her meals reduced to scraps or nothing at all, Gertrude claiming she didn't deserve food. The torture grew grotesque. Gertrude and Paula scalded her with boiling water, the burns blistering her thighs and back, her skin peeling as she shivered in the damp dark. Johnny, egged on by his mother, carved words into Sylvia's stomach with a heated sewing needle. The letters, "I'm a prostitute," and "proud of it," etched in jagged lines, his giggles mixing with her whimpers. Neighborhood kids, drawn by the spectacle, paid nickels to see the bad girl in the basement, some spitting or throwing stones, others turning away, haunted but silent. Sylvia's body wasted away, her weight dropping below 90 pounds, her skin a map of bruises, burns, and cuts, over 150 in all, some infected, oozing pus. Gertrude, lost in her own madness, forced Sylvia to eat her own vomit when she couldn't keep down the meager broth offered, the act of final humiliation before the end. Jenny, risking a beating, slipped her sister water, their fingers touching in secret, Sylvia's voice barely a whisper. "Don't tell Mom and Dad. They'll feel too guilty." On October 23rd, Sylvia's strength began to fade. Her body shutting down from starvation and trauma, her breathing shallow as she lay on the basement floor, the cold seeping into her bones. Gertrude, sensing the end, tried to cover her tracks, ordering Paula and Ricky to bathe Sylvia in the upstairs tub, hoping to erase the evidence of months of horror. The water stung Sylvia's open wounds, her body limp as they scrubbed, her eyes fluttering with a final spark of life. She spoke softly to Jenny, who knelt nearby, promising to watch over her, her voice a thread of love in the chaos. But the bath was too late. Sylvia's heart faltered, her pulse slowing as dehydration and shock took hold. On October 26, 1965, she slipped away, her body still in the tub, her face peaceful despite the horror, her last breath a sigh that ended 3 months of unimaginable suffering. Gertrude, panicked, coaxed her children to lie, claiming Sylvia had run away and returned injured. But Jenny's tear-streaked face told a different story, her silence a dam holding back the truth. The Indianapolis Police Department arrived that evening, called by Gertrude, after she found Sylvia unresponsive, her story thin and frantic. Officers stepped into the house, the air thick with the stench of neglect and fear, their flashlights sweeping the living room where Gertrude's children stood in a tense huddle. In the bathroom, they found Sylvia's body, emaciated and covered in wounds, her skin a patchwork of burns and bruises, the carved words on her stomach a grotesque signature of her torment. Detective Sergeant William Cross, a seasoned cop with a young daughter, felt his stomach turn, his notebook trembling as he recorded the scene. Jenny, shaking, whispered to him when Gertrude's back was turned, "Get me out, and I'll tell you everything." Taken to the station, her brace clicking on the tile, she spilled the horror. Gertrude's beatings, the basement, the neighborhood kid's role, Sylvia's slow death. The autopsy, conducted by Dr. Arthur Keble, was harrowing. Malnutrition, dehydration, over 150 injuries, internal bleeding, and a brain hemorrhage from repeated blows. The cause of death, a culmination of torture no child should endure. The city reeled. The Indianapolis Star, splashing Sylvia's story across front pages. The headline, "Teen Girl Tortured to Death," shocking a community used to petty crime. Not this depravity. Police arrested Gertrude, Paula, Stephanie, Johnny, Ricky Hobbs, and Coy Hubbard. Their mugshots, a gallery of blank stares and defiance. The house at 3850 East New York Street, sealed off. Neighbors whispering about the screams they'd ignored. Number 90 scary, actually, say corn at bears. The Likens family, back from the carnival circuit, collapsed in grief. Lester and Betty blaming themselves for trusting Gertrude, their savings too meager to bring their girls along. Jenny, placed with foster parents, carried the weight of survival. Her testimony, the backbone of the case. Detectives searched the house, finding bloodstains in the basement, a paddle with Sylvia's hair, needles used for burns, and a curtain rod bent from blows. Neighbors, guilt-ridden, admitted hearing cries, but fearing retaliation in the rough neighborhood. Their silence a wound as deep as the crime. The trial began in May 1966 at the Marion County Courthouse. The courtroom packed with reporters, locals, and carnival workers who'd known Sylvia's songbird voice. Prosecutor Leroy New laid out the horror methodically, starting with Jenny's testimony, her voice steady despite tears, recounting every beating, burn, and humiliation, her sister's courage shining through. Cable displayed photos of Sylvia's injuries, jurors gasping at the carved words, the burns, the sheer number of wounds. Witnesses, neighborhood kids, some as young as 11, admitted their roles, their voices shaking, claiming Gertrude's control made them obey, fear silencing their consciences. Gertrude took the stand, her gaunt face emotionless, claiming Sylvia was a troubled runaway who came back battered, her lies unraveling under cross-examination. Paula, defiant, admitted hitting Sylvia, but blamed her mother's orders. Stephanie and Johnny echoed the excuse, their youth no shield from guilt. Ricky and Coy, neighborhood accomplices, confessed to punches and kicks, their remorse mixed with excuses of peer pressure. The evidence was overwhelming. Sylvia's body told the story her voice couldn't. The basement, a chamber of horrors. The community's silence, a co-conspirator. The jury, after 4 days, returned verdicts on May 19, 1966. Gertrude guilty of first-degree murder, sentenced to life. Paula guilty of second-degree murder, life. Johnny, Ricky, and Coy guilty of manslaughter, 221 years. And Stephanie's charges dropped for testifying. The city exhaled. Justice served, but hollow. Sylvia's absence a permanent scar. Appeals dragged on. Gertrude's sentence reduced to 18 years in 1971. Paroled in 1985. Her death in 1985. Her death in 1990. Paula served 3 years, vanishing into obscurity. The younger boys served short terms, their lives marked by shame. Jenny, adopted by a kind family, carried Sylvia's memory, her testimony a beacon for victims. Indianapolis changed. The house razed in the 1970s. The lot, a quiet reminder of a girl who sang through pain. The Likens family never returned. Their carnival days ended. Betty and Lester haunted by guilt. Sylvia's story, told in books like House of Eagle and a 2007 film, An American Crime, gripped the nation, her face a symbol of innocence betrayed. Vigils marked anniversaries, flowers left where the house stood, Reddit threads dissecting the case's horror, Sylvia's courage in enduring a lesson in humanity's darkness. The neighborhood rebuilt, but her song lingered, a whisper of a girl whose suffering exposed the cost of silence. As this story fades, another one waits in the shadows for its turn. The humid air of Belize City hung heavy that September morning in 1998, thick with the scent of salt from the nearby Caribbean and the faint rot of mangroves along the riverbanks. Shirley Nicholas, just 13 years old, with her hair tied in neat braids and her school uniform crisp, despite the heat, skipped along the dusty path toward Wesley Upper School in the southern part of the city. It was September 8, a Tuesday like any other, the streets alive with the chatter of students heading to class and vendors hawking fresh mangoes from wooden carts. Shirley's laughter rang out as she walked with her classmate, the two girls sharing secrets about boys and weekend plans, their backpacks bouncing lightly against their side. She was a bright fifth grader, full of dreams, maybe becoming a teacher like her aunt, or escaping the poverty of her family's cramped home in the Lake Independence area by studying hard. Her mother, June, had kissed her forehead that morning, reminding her to be home before dark, her voice carrying the quiet worry of a single parent scraping by on odd job. Shirley waved goodbye to her friend at the corner of Euphrates Avenue, turning back for a moment with a grin before veering off toward Allenby Street, a shortcut she took sometimes to pick up a treat from a corner shop. That was the last anyone saw of her alive, her small figure disappearing into the maze of narrow lanes where the city's underbelly lurked just out of sight. Days stretched into a week, then two, the tropical sun beating down as June Nicholas paced her tiny living room, her hands wringing a faded dish towel, her eyes red from endless tears. Shirley's absence gnawed at the family, whispers among neighbors turning to outright fear. Had she run off with a boy, or fallen into one of the river's hidden currents? Police from the Belize City Station took a report, but resources were thin. Officers stretched across petty thefts and bar fights in a country where violent crime was rising, but child abduction still felt like a nightmare from afar. June plastered posters on telephone poles, her daughter's school photo smiling out with missing. Shirley Nicholas, age 13, scrawled in bold letters, the reward a meager $500 scraped from family savings. The city, a former British colony with a population barely topping 50,000, buzzed with unease. Parents walking their kids to school, locking doors that had always stood open. On October 9th, 31 days after Shirley vanished, A fisherman wading through a shallow pool off the western highway, 8 miles from the city, spotted something unnatural in the water. A flash of fabric. A flash of fabric. Pale skin, bloated by immersion. He called out to his brother, their voices echoing over the mangroves, and together they pulled the body from the murky shallows, the sight turning their stomachs. A girl's corpse, face down, her school uniform torn and mud-caked, her body bearing over 40 stab wounds to the chest, head, and neck, slashes so deep they exposed bone. June Nicholas arrived at the morgue under a relentless downpour, her umbrella forgotten as she clutched a photo of Shirley, her legs buckling when the coroner confirmed the identity by dental records and a silver bracelet on the wrist. The autopsy painted a horror beyond words. The girl had been raped, her body mutilated with cuts that suggested a blade wielded with deliberate precision, perhaps a scalpel or surgical knife. Not the crude tools of a street thug. Not the crude tools of a street. Her left arm was nearly severed, hanging by sinew, and defensive wounds crisscrossed her hands and forearms, evidence of a fierce struggle for life. Dr. Mario Estrada Brand, the pathologist, noted the wound's cleanliness, the edges smooth, as if made by someone with medical knowledge, a detail that would haunt investigators. June collapsed against her husband, her sobs raw, demanding answers from the stone-faced officers who promised a full probe. But in Belize City, where poverty bred desperation, and the police force numbered barely 800 for the whole nation, promises were cheap. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors in the sweltering heat, but witnesses were scarce. Fear silenced tongues, and the humid climate had erased footprints long ago. Shirley's backpack, found nearby with her books untouched, offered no clues, only the faint scent of her favorite strawberry shampoo clinging to the strap. Word spread like wildfire through the close-knit Creole and Garifuna communities, mothers clutching their daughters closer, fathers patrolling streets with makeshift clubs. The local paper, a mandala, ran front-page stories, dubbing the killer a monster in our midst, while radio stations urged tips to a hotline that rang silent. June refused to bury her daughter until justice came, her home a shrine of candles and photos, neighbors bringing pots of rice and beans in quiet solidarity. But as October faded into November, the trail cooled, the stab wounds pattern filed away as a random act of savagery. Little did they know, Shirley was just the beginning, her death the first cut in a series that would carve terror into the heart of Belize. The new year brought no relief, the tropical rains pounding the tin roofs of Belize City as parents whispered prayers for protection. Jay Blades, a 9-year-old with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin, skipped out of her family's ramshackle home in the Pickstock area on September 6, 1998, just 2 days before Shirley vanished. Jay was the baby of the family, her laughter a constant in the cramped quarters where her mother, a seamstress, mended clothes by lamplight. She wore a simple blue dress that morning, her small feet in worn sandals as she headed to the corner shop for a loaf of bread, the errand a daily ritual. The streets were alive with the morning bustle, women carrying baskets of laundry, men heading to construction sites, but Jay never made it back. Her mother, noticing the empty hands at lunch, sent siblings searching, their calls fading into the humid air. Days turned to weeks, the family pinning hopes on rumors of a runaway, but deep down, fear gnawed. On October 10th, the day after Shirley's body surfaced, Fishermen along the western highway pulled something from the mangroves, a child's dress and tennis shoes, waterlogged but recognizable as Jay's, the blue fabric torn, stained with mud and something darker. The discovery shattered the Blades family, Jay's mother wailing as she identified the clothes, her hands trembling on the sodden material. Police dredged the area, their boats cutting through the shallow waters, but the river gave up little fragments of bone, a skull too degraded to confirm, but dental records later matched Jay's. Her small frame ravaged by the elements and whatever horrors preceded them. The autopsy, conducted in the under-equipped morgue, revealed signs of sexual assault, stab wounds similar to Shirley's, deep, precise cuts to the torso and neck, the left arm missing entirely, as if surgically removed. Dr. Estrada Brand shook his head over the body, noting the same clean edges, the same instrument used, whispering to colleagues about a killer with a surgeon's touch. Jay's dress on Shirley's body suggested a twisted connection. The Ripper dressing his victims like dolls, swapping clothes in a macabre game. The city, already on edge, erupted in panic. Schools posted guards, parents walked children hand in hand, the curfew for minors enforced with fines and pleas. June Nicholas and Jay's mother met at a vigil, their grief binding them, lighting candles by the river as rain mingled with tears, vowing the monster would pay. As 1999 dawned, the fear settled like a fog over Belize City, the humid mornings broken by the wail of mothers calling for daughters who never answered. Jackie Fern Mallett, 12 years old, with braids adorned with colorful beads and a backpack full of dreams, stepped out onto the playground of St. Pip, Ignatius School on March 22nd, the sun beating down on the concrete yard where children chased each other during recess. Jackie was a fourth grader full of life, her laughter ringing as she played tag with friends, her uniform skirt swirling in the heat. She lived with her grandmother in a tiny home near Euphrates Avenue, the same area where Shirley had vanished, her days filled with schoolwork and helping with chores, her eyes sparkling with hopes of becoming a nurse like the aunt she admired. That morning, her sister Adelma had walked her to the gate, waving as Jackie ran inside, the school bell ringing like a promise of safety. But during the midday break, Jackie slipped out for a moment, perhaps to buy a snack from a vendor or chase a butterfly, her small figure disappearing around the corner, never to return. Adelma waited at the gate after school, her heart sinking as the playground emptied. Jackie's desk empty in class. The family searched frantically, knocking on doors, posting flyers with her photo, a gap-toothed smile that melted hearts. Police from the local station took the report, their notebooks filling with details. But the trail was cold from the start, the bustling streets erasing footsteps. 2 days later, on March 24th, a construction worker clearing a feeder road near Homeland Memorial Park, the same stretch where Shirley's body had lain months before, stumbled on a shallow grave, the soil disturbed, a child's hand protruding like a plea from the earth. He shouted for help, workers gathering as they unearthed the horror. Jackie's body, face down in a puddle of rainwater and blood, her left hand severed at the wrist, stab wounds riddling her chest and neck, over 30 in all. The cuts precise, almost surgical. Her school uniform was soaked, her braids matted with mud, signs of rape evident in the bruising and tearing. Adelma identified her from a necklace, her screams echoing as the grandmother fainted, the family shattered in an instant. The discovery linked the deaths irrevocably. Police noting the missing hand, mirroring Shirley's near-severed arm. The stab patterns identical. The mutilation suggesting the same handiwork. Dr. Estrada Brand examined the body in the dim morgue light, his gloved hands tracing the wounds, muttering about a killer with anatomical knowledge, perhaps a doctor or butcher gone mad. Rumors swirled in the markets. A man in a red car, masked, luring girls with candy, prompting a dusk-to-dawn curfew for children under 16. Guards posted at school gates, parents escorting kids like prisoners. Michael Williams, a 40-year-old mechanic who lived nearby and had offered Jackie and Adelma a ride that morning, which they refused, was questioned, his alibi shaky, a prior allegation of molesting a girl surfacing. A prior allegation of molesting a girl. He was arrested, the city breathing a sigh of relief. But while he sat in Hattieville prison, the horror continued, proving him innocent of the larger evil. Jackie's funeral drew hundreds, her small coffin carried through streets lined with mourners, her grandmother clutching a teddy bear, vowing the Ripper would burn. The vigil grew, families uniting in grief, their chants for justice rising like smoke from the funeral pyre. Summer's relentless heat baked the streets of Belize City, the air shimmering as fear took root deeper, parents double-locking doors and whispering warnings to daughters. Erica Wills, 8 years old, with pigtails and a Tweety bird ring that jingled on her finger, waved goodbye to her mother on June 26, 1999, promising to be back soon from a relative's house on Euphrates Avenue. Erica was a first grader at a local primary school, her days filled with hopscotch and drawings of cats, her small world bounded by the family's one-room home, where her mother worked nights as a cleaner. The mix-up was innocent. Erica's aunt thought she was home. Her mother believed she was with kin. But by June 29, panic set in, the little girl's absence a void that swallowed the family. Posters went up, her photo, a cherubic face with missing teeth, staring from lampposts, the $1,000 reward from community donations drawing tips that led nowhere. Police searched the canals and swamps, their boats cutting through lily pads, but the humid nights brought only mosquitoes and silence. 22 days later, on July 18th, a quarry worker in Gracie Rock, 20 miles west of the city, spotted bones scattered behind the rocks, picked clean by vultures circling overhead. He called his boss. Their voices hushed as they gathered the fragments. A skull with child-sized teeth, ribs cracked like twigs, a pelvis too small for an adult. The remains were Erica's, identified by the Tweety ring clutched in skeletal fingers and a hairband tangled in the hair strand. The site was remote, the body exposed to the elements, but the autopsy revealed the horror beneath the decay. Stab wounds to the neck and chest, over 20 in all, the cuts clean and deep, suggesting the same blade as the others. Her left arm, missing at the elbow. Signs of sexual assault lingered in the pelvic fractures, drugs and alcohol in her system, numbing her before the end. Dr. Estrada Brand shook his head in the morgue, the precision of the mutilation pointing to medical skill, the torture evident in the shallow cuts across her torso. Erica's mother wailed at the identification, clutching the ring, her grief a storm that lashed the quarry where her baby had been dumped like refuse. The city erupted, protests forming outside police headquarters, mothers marching with signs reading "Stop the Ripper," demanding action as the curfew tightened, schools releasing early, fathers sleeping with machetes by the bed. The FBI arrived in July, agents from Quantico landing in Belize City with briefcases of profiling tools, their white shirts stark against the tropical disarray. They pored over crime scenes, mapping dump sites along highways and rivers, noting the killer's pattern, luring girls with gifts or rides, holding them captive for days, drugging them with alcohol and sedatives before the ritualistic cuts. Scotland Yard joined soon after. British forensics experts flown in to assist with autopsies, their microscopes revealing fibers from a common cloth at each site, perhaps a surgeon's gown. Suspects piled up. A doctor with a history of abuse, a butcher seen talking to girls, but alibis held, DNA tech lagging in the humid labs. Michael Williams was released from Jackie's murder, his innocence and Erica's slaying clearing him, the city deflating as the Ripper struck again, his shadow lengthening over the terrified street. Winter's chill did little to cool the terror gripping Belize City, the February winds carrying whispers of dread through the narrow lanes of Mossel Street. Noemi Hernandez, 14 years old, with long braids and a backpack full of textbooks, stepped out on February 15, 2000, to run a quick errand for her father, a bottle of soda from the corner store. Her school uniform swapped for jeans and a t-shirt, her laughter trailing as she waved goodbye. Noemi was a straight-A student at St. Ignatius, the same school as Jackie, her days filled with math problems and dreams of becoming a lawyer, escaping the poverty of her family's home, where her father worked as a laborer and her mother sewed dresses by candle. She was the eldest of four, responsible and kind, tutoring younger siblings in the evenings, her smile alight in the cramped quarters. The errand should have taken minutes, but as the sun set over the river, Noemi vanished, her absence noticed when dinner cooled on the table, her father pacing the porch, calling her name into the gathering dark. 9 days of agony followed, the family plastering flyers across the city. Noemi's photo, a confident grin with braces glinting, staring from market stalls and bus stops. The reward now $5,000 from business owners terrified for their own. Police dragged the river, their boats churning the muddy waters, but hope flickered until February 24th, when a Belize Defense Force soldier patrolling the Haulover Bridge area spotted a mound of sand on the riverbank, and, disturbed and unnatural, he approached cautiously, the tide lapping at his boots, and uncovered a horror that turned his stomach. A girl's body, mutilated and partially submerged, stab wounds riddling her face and neck, over 30 in all. Her left arm severed clean at the shoulder, body parts missing as if harvested. The cuts were precise, surgical, the same blades worked, signs of rape and torture evident in the bruising and ligature marks on her wrists. Noemi's father identified her by the blue jeans clinging to her legs, his knees buckling as he touched the fabric, his roar of grief echoing over the water. The discovery sealed the Ripper's signature, the fifth in his gruesome tally. The city descending into chaos, riots at the police station, demands for martial law, parents keeping children chained to their sides. Dr. Estrada Brand's autopsy confirmed the pattern. Drugs and alcohol in her system, held captive for days. The mutilations post-mortem, the killer's tool a scalpel or bone saw, his knowledge anatomical, perhaps a doctor or vet gone rogue. The FBI ramped up, agents profiling a white male in his 30s, local ties, access to sedatives, the Scotland Yard team analyzing fibers, linking all scenes to a common vehicle. perhaps a red sedan spotted in witness report. Suspects emerged: a nurse's aide with a record, a taxi driver seen near schools. But polygraphs failed. Alibis held, the human evidence degrading in under-equipped labs. Candlelight vigils swelled to thousands, families of the girls uniting in a sea of photos. Shirley's braids, Jay's pigtails, Jackie's beads, Erica's ring, Noemi's braces, their chants for justice drowning the river's murmur. Belize City simmered under the weight of unsolved rage. The Ripper's silence after Noemi, a taunt that festered like an open wound. The FBI's profile painted a monster in plain sight, a man trusted by children offering rides or candy, his charm hiding the blade, his medical skill turning torture to art. Scotland Yard's forensics linked fibers from a surgical claw, tire tracks from a common van, but without DNA matches, tech too new for the time. The case stalled, evidence boxes gathering dust in a humid warehouse. Families like June Nicholas refused closure, her home a shrine to Shirley. Annual vigils drawing crowds who lit lanterns on the river, their flames dancing like lost souls. The city changed. Schools fenced higher, curfews etched in law. Trust eroded as strangers became suspect. In 2022, a new forensic lab opened, vowing to rescan the DNA. But 25 years on, the Ripper roams free, his victims' ghosts whispering in the mangroves, a nation's shame etched in blood. As this story fades, another one waits in the shadows for its turn. The autumn chill settled over Columbia, Missouri, like a heavy fog, the kind that muffled the footsteps of late-night revelers stumbling home from bars and parties. It was October 31st, 2001, Halloween night, and the streets of downtown buzzed with costumed college kids from the University of Missouri, their laughter echoing off brick buildings as the clock ticked past 2 a.m. Kent Heitholt, a 48-year-old sports editor at the Columbia Daily Tribune, pushed through the back door of the newspaper's office at 101 North 4th Street, his keys jingling softly in the quiet lot. His broad shoulders strained against a navy blazer, his salt and pepper hair tousled from a long night of deadlines, his mind already drifting to the drive home to his wife, Stacy, and their 2 teenage children waiting in their cozy house on the outskirts of town. Kent was the heart of the sports desk, a man whose passion for high school football and Mizzou basketball lit up pages with vivid stories, his easy grin and firm handshake making him a fixture at games and press boxes. He'd stayed late that night, polishing a feature on the Tigers season, the fluorescent lights of the newsroom, his only company as the Halloween crowds thinned outside. Kent locked the office door behind him, his breath visible in the crisp air, and walked toward his silver Ford Taurus, parked under a dim street lamp, the lot empty save for a few employee cars scattered like forgotten toys. He fumbled for his keys, the metal cold against his fingers, when a shadow detached from the darkness near the alley, a figure, tall and hurried, brushing past him with a mumbled apology. Kent nodded, dismissing it as a drunk student, but as he reached his car door, a sudden blow cracked against the back of his skull, the pain exploding like fireworks behind his eye. He staggered, his hand flying to his head, blood warm and sticky trickling down his neck. But before he could turn or shout, another strike landed, this one to his temple, the world tilting as his knees buckled. The attacker, strong, silent, fueled by some unknown rage, loomed over him, fists raining down in a frenzy of blunt force, the sounds of flesh meeting flesh lost in the night's hush. Kent fought back instinctively, his arms flailing, his voice a guttural cry that caught in his throat as a belt, his own snatched from his waist, wrapped around his neck, tightening like a noose. The struggle was brutal, but brief. Kent's body thrashing on the cold asphalt, his fingers clawing at the leather as his vision tunneled, the pressure crushing his windpipe. His attacker, panting with effort, held firm, the belt cinching until Kent's movements slowed, his gasps turning to silence, his eyes staring blankly at the undercarriage of his car. Blood pooled beneath his head, mixing with motor oil from a leak, the metallic tang sharp in the air. The killer lingered for a moment, wiping sweat from his brow, then vanished into the alley, footsteps fading toward the By George bar a block away, where bass thumped and laughter spilled out. Kent lay there, alone in the lot, his body twisted unnaturally, his tie askew, his wallet untouched in his pocket. A murder, without robbery, without motive apparent, just raw, inexplicable violence. Minutes ticked by, the Halloween revelry oblivious, until a coworker, Jeff Howard, stepped out for a smoke around 2:30 a.m., his flashlight beam catching the glint of Kent's watch in the shadows. Jeff froze, his cigarette dropping from his lips, the glow illuminating the horror. Kent's face swollen and purple, his neck encircled by his own belt, snapped at the buckle from the fort, the fragment lying inches away like a discarded tool. "Kent? Oh God, Kent!" Jeff's shout shattered the night, his hands fumbling for his phone as he knelt, checking for a pulse that wasn't there, his fingers slick with blood. Sirens wailed soon after, Columbia Police Department cruisers screeching into the lot, blue lights pulsing against the brick walls of the Tribune building. Officers cordoned off the scene with yellow tape, their faces grim under the sodium lamps. Detectives like Jeff Smith and Mike Williams, arriving with notebooks and cameras, the flash bulbs popping as they documented the savagery. Kent's body was a map of brutality, blunt force trauma to the head from an unknown object, perhaps a tire iron or pipe, fracturing his skull in multiple places, ligature marks from the belt deep enough to bruise his trachea, defensive wounds on his hands and arms, scratches, suggesting he'd grabbed at his attacker in the dark. No weapon found nearby, no footprints in the dry gravel, just a single unidentified hair clutched in Kent's fist, dark and coarse, a silent clue from beyond the grave. Stacy Heithold arrived at the station house around 4 a.m., her hair disheveled from sleep, her eyes wide with disbelief as officers broke the news, her knees giving way in the lobby. Kent had kissed her goodbye that evening, promising to be home by midnight, his voice warm on the phone during a quick check-in around 11 p.m. Now, she sat in a sterile interview room, her hands clasped around a styrofoam cup of coffee that went cold, recounting his routine, late nights at the paper, a stop at the By George for a beer with colleagues, his love for the job that kept him out past bedtime. Their children, 16-year-old Megan and 14-year-old Adam, were asleep at home with a sitter, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding. Stacy's world shattered, her questions tumbling out. Who would do this? Why, Kent, a man without enemies, beloved by his community. Detectives offered little comfort. Their initial theory, a robbery gone wrong, but the untouched wallet poked holes in that narrative. The crime scene unit combed the lot until dawn, bagging the belt fragment, swabbing blood pools, lifting latent prints from Kent's car door. 3 unidentified sets one inside on the steering wheel, suggesting the killer had touched it briefly. A custodian, Shauna Ornt, came forward later that morning, her voice trembling as she described seeing two white men in their 20s near Kent's car around 2:15 a.m. One leaning in close, the other pacing. One leaning in close, the other pacing. Both fleeing when she approached, with her keys jingling. Columbia woke to the horror splashed across the Tribune's front page. Sports editor slain in parking lot. The irony bitter as the paper Kent edited chronicled his own death. The city of 84,000, a college town nestled in the Ozarks, reeled. Mizzou students locking doors, parents walking kids to school. The By George bar, a focal point as patrons recalled seeing two young men, one tall and lanky, the other stocky, nursing beers around closing time. Kent's funeral drew thousands, his casket draped in a Mizzou flag, Stacy clutching his photo, her vows of finding answers echoing in the packed church. Detectives canvassed the bar, pulling security footage that showed blurry figures leaving around 2 a.m., one wiping his hands on his jeans, the other glancing back nervously. Tips flooded in, a jilted colleague, a disgruntled reader, but nothing stuck, the case stalling as autumn leaves fell, the hair in Kent's hand unmatched to any database, the prints a ghost. Stacy pushed for answers, her grief fueling calls to the doc, her voice breaking on TV interviews. Kent was the kindest man. Who could hate him enough to do this? 2 years dragged by. The investigation, a cold file, gathering dust in the CPD's evidence room. Kent's family marking anniversaries with river releases of lanterns, their light fading into the Missouri night like hope itself. Ryan Ferguson, then 17, a high school senior with a mop of brown hair and dreams of college basketball, partied hard that Halloween at the By George, shots of tequila, blurring the night as he danced with friends. His buddy Charles Erickson. 18, matching him drink for drink. Ryan, lanky and outgoing, chased girls and laughs, his life a whirlwind of parties and plans, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding blocks away. Charles, quieter, with a creative streak, sketched in notebooks between sips, his mind wandering to stories and songs. They stumbled out around 2:30 a.m., the lot empty, Kent's body already discovered, but the boys, buzzed and blind, walked home without a glance, crashing on Ryan's couch until morning. Life rolled on, Ryan to community college, Charles to art classes, the murder a distant headline, until October 2003, when a local TV segment reignited the case, a reporter interviewing Stacy about the unsolved law. Charles watched the broadcast alone in his basement apartment. The screen, the tequila haze from 2 years prior crept back, fragmented images, darkness, a struggle, blood on hands, stirring in his subconscious, his artist's mind, weaving nightmares from booze-fueled blackouts. Guilt gnawed? What if? Whispers, turning to certainty in the quiet hours, his sketches darkening with shadowy figures and alley scene. He called an anonymous tip line on October 28, 2003, his voice shaky. I think I know something about Kent Heitholt. Detectives Jeff Smith and Mike Williams, frustrated by the cold case, met him at a coffee shop. Their notebooks open as Charles spilled a story born of guilt and imagination. He and Ryan, drunk and desperate for cash, had spotted Kent in the lot, beaten him for his wallet, strangled him when he fought back, strangled him when he fought back, then fled, laughing to the bar. The details were vivid but wrong. No robbery, the timeline off, but the detectives, hungry for a break, leaned in, their questions leading like a script. Interviews stretched over days. Charles in a conference room, his hands trembling as he recalled more. The belt, the blood, Ryan's role as lookout. Under pressure, he confessed fully, implicating Ryan, the story solidifying in retellings despite gaps. Ryan, now 19 and working construction, was pulled in, his shock turning to denial as detectives confronted him with Charles's tale. "He's lying. We were together the whole night," Ryan insisted. But the pressure mounted, his parents hiring a lawyer as the media frenzy began. Breakthrough in Heitholt murder headlines splashing across the Missourian. Charles pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in February 2004. His deal for 25 years, trading testimony against Ryan, his remorse a performance honed in sleepless nights. Ryan's trial in October 2005 was a spectacle. The Boone County Courthouse packed, prosecutor Kevin Crane painting the boys as thrill killers, Charles's confession the star witness, his voice steady as he detailed the beating, his voice steady as he detailed the beat. The belt. Ryan's hands on Kent's throat. Defense attorney J.K. Young fought back, highlighting inconsistencies, Charles's timeline shifting, no physical evidence linking them, the unidentified prints and hair unaccounted for. But Crane hammered the emotional Stacy Heitholt, testifying through tears about Kent's last call, his love for his kids, the void left by monsters like Ryan. The jury, swayed by Charles's vivid lies and the city's thirst for closure, convicted Ryan after 4 hours, sentencing him to 40 years on October 27, 2005, his mother's sobs echoing as he was led away and cut. Columbia exhaled, toasts raised at the By George to justice served, but cracks appeared almost immediately. Charles's story evolved in interviews, details changing, his blackouts admitted, yet prosecutors stood firm. The case closed in their eyes. Ryan's appeals began in 2006, his family scraping for lawyers as he adjusted to prison life, the weight of innocence crushing his spirit. Private investigator Kathleen Zellner joined in 2008, her bulldog tenacity digging into the files, uncovering suppressed evidence. Shauna Orn's statement of 2 white men running, never shared with the defense. A composite sketch of a suspect, not Ryan. Unidentified DNA on the belt fragment. Witnesses recanted, bar patrons, admitting coercion by police, their IDs of Ryan planted after leading questions. Charles in prison wavered, his confessions a house of cards, memory experts testifying to false recall from suggestion. By 2011, motions piled up. Judge Richard Callahan denying relief, but Zellner's pressure mounted. Media like 48 Hours, spotlighting the flaws. Dream Killer documentary in 2011, exposing the railroading. Ryan's father, Bill, sold assets. His mother's health failing under stress. The family a united front against a system that had stolen their son. The breakthrough came in 2012, a habeas corpus petition revealing prosecutorial misconduct. Crane withholding Orn's full statement. Police interviews laced with suggestion. Charles's confession, a product of 20 hours of leading questions. Missouri Court of Appeals overturned the conviction on November 12, 2013. Ryan walking free after 3,764 days. His first breath outside prison, tasting of vindication and law. Columbia stirred. Apologies from some. Denial from others. Crane retiring amid whispers of ethics probes. Ryan sued the city in 2014. His civil rights case a reckoning. $800,000 from the city. Charles, still imprisoned, filed for exoneration in 2016. His pleas citing coercion, but denied in 2022. His 25 years ticking down without relief. The settlement funded Ryan's advocacy, his book Unreal a bestseller, speaking at law schools on innocence loss. Yet Kent's murder remains unsolved. The real killer free. Shadows lengthening over the tribunal. Stacy, remarried but haunted, pushes for reinvestigation. Her voice steady in interviews. We got Ryan back, but Kent's justice waits. New leads surface. A tip about Mike Boyd, the last to see Kent alive. The last to see Kent alive. His shifting stories of two men in the alley. His unexplained wealth post-murder. But police dragged feet. Corruption stained deep. Bill Ferguson died in 2015. His last words to Ryan. Keep fighting. The family endures. Ryan, a podcaster exposing flaws. His podcast, Unreal, dissecting cases like his own. Columbia reflects. The By George closed. It's a lot of ghost of that Halloween. Kent's legacy in sports pages, yellowing with time. The hair in his fist, the prints on his car. Clues gathering dust, the true monster walking free. A frustration that burns eternal. As this story fades, another one waits in the shadows for its turn. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of a modest ranch house in Tallahassee, Florida, casting warm stripes across the kitchen table where Mike Williams sat with his morning coffee. His strong hands wrapped around the mug as he scanned the sports page. It was December 16, 2000, a Saturday alive with the promise of duck season, and Mike, 31 years old, with a broad smile and the build of a man who coached youth soccer on weekends, felt the familiar pull of the outdoors. His dark hair was neatly combed, his flannel shirt tucked into jeans, his eyes sparkling with the quiet excitement of a father stealing a rare day away from family duties. Mike worked as a real estate appraiser, his days filled with measuring homes and crunching numbers, his nights devoted to his wife, Denise, and their 1-year-old daughter, Brianne. A chubby-cheeked bundle who cooed from her high chair nearby. "No, ladies, I'm a Mercedes guy, turn there." Denise, 29, with her long auburn hair and sharp green eyes, moved gracefully through the kitchen in a sundress. Her laughter light as she handed Mike his thermos of coffee, her kiss lingering on his cheek. "Be safe out there," she said, her voice soft but edged with the worry of a young mother, her hand resting on his shoulder as if to anchor him. Mike grinned, ruffling Brianne's hair, promising to be home by lunch with a brace of ducks for dinner, his waders already packed in the truck, his shotgun cleaned and ready. Mike's life was one of steady rhythm, rooted in the faith and family values of his Baptist upbringing in Thomasville, Georgia, where he'd met Denise in high school, their romance blooming amid pep rallies and stolen glances. They married young, at 22, settling in Tallahassee, where Mike's career took off, his appraisals funding a comfortable home on Horseshoe Plantation with a white picket fence and a swing set for Brianne. Denise, a high school math teacher with a knack for numbers, dreamed bigger. Whispers of real estate ventures, luxury flips, in the Panhandle's booming market. Her ambition a spark that both excited and exhausted Mike. They were the golden couple, church friends, envying their poise, Mike coaching Little League, while Denise led youth group, their love a quiet anchor in a world of change. But beneath the surface, cracks had formed. Denise's restlessness growing as Mike's long hours left her alone with the baby, her eyes wandering to Brian Winchester, Mike's best friend since childhood. A lanky insurance agent with a quick laugh and a shared history of boyhood adventures. Brian, married to Kathy with 2 kids of their own, had sold Mike a $1.75 million life insurance policy just months earlier. The paperwork signed over backyard beers, Mike joking about protecting his family. Unaware, the policy would become a noose. That morning, Mike hugged Denise tight, his arms strong around her waist, his voice warm as he promised a big haul from Lake Seminole, the sprawling reservoir straddling Florida and Georgia, where he'd hunted since boyhood. He kissed Brianne's forehead, her tiny fingers grabbing his collar, and climbed into his white Ford F-150, the truck rumbling to life as he waved goodbye, the driveway crunching under his tires. Denise watched from the porch, her hand shading her eyes, her smile fading as the taillights disappeared around the bend. Mike drove the 40 minutes north, the radio tuned to country, his mind wandering to the upcoming holiday, a trip to Georgia for Christmas with both families. He arrived at the lake around 5:30 a.m., the mist rising off the water like ghosts, the air crisp with the scent of mud and marsh grass. Lake Seminole was his sanctuary, a 37,000-acre expanse dotted with cypress knees and alligator eyes, the perfect spot for a solo hunt before the crowd. He parked at the ramp near Tallahassee Creek, his waders sloshing as he waded into the shallows, his shotgun slung over his shoulder, decoys bobbing in the current. The lake was still, the first pink light breaking the horizon as Mike set his spread, his boots sinking into the soft bottom, his breath steady with focus. He waited, the silence broken only by the call of an egret, his thoughts drifting to Denise's recent distance, her late nights at school events, her sighs over bills from a failed real estate class. But love pulled him back, a text to her phone. Love you, see you soon, by 6 a.m. As the sun crested, Mike felt a rustle in the reeds, his heart quickening. Not ducks, but a figure emerging from the mist, tall and familiar. Tall and familiar? Waders and shotgun in hand. Brian Winchester stepped forward, his face flushed, his voice casual as he called out, "Mike, buddy, thought I'd join you." Mike grinned, surprised but welcoming, the 2 men sharing a quick hug, Brian's grip lingering a second too long. His eyes darting to the empty ramp. "Let me hear one more. They waded out together, the water lapping at their chests, their decoys bobbing in sync, the morning unfolding like old times, stories of high school pranks, laughs over Brian's latest insurance sale. But Brian's mind raced, his hand steady on the shotgun, the plan he'd hatched with Denise burning in his chest. Denise had met Brian in the shadows of her marriage, their affair igniting in 1997 during a church picnic, his easy charm, a contrast to Mike's steady routine. Brian, with his crooked smile and tales of boyhood fishing trips with Mike, became her escape, their stolen moments in his insurance office turning to passionate nights in motels off I-10. By 1999, the guilt twisted into desperation. Denise confiding her unhappiness, her dreams of wealth clashing with Mike's frugal ways. Brian, married but adrift in his own routine, saw opportunity in her fire, their talks shifting from love to escape, divorce too messy, too public in their tight-knit Baptist circle. What if something happened to him? Brian whispered one night, his hand on her thigh, the idea planting like a seed. Denise's eyes widened, then hardened, her mind calculating the $1.75 million policy Brian had sold Mike, the payout a ticket to freedom and fortune. They plotted in whispers, Brian sourcing a gun from a shady contact, Denise practicing her alibi, tears ready for the camera. On December 16th, as they waded deeper, the water to their necks, Brian raised the shotgun, the barrel cold against Mike's back. "Sorry, brother," he murmured, the shot muffled by the lake, Mike's body jerking as the bullet tore through his lung, blood blooming in the water like ink. Mike gasped, his hands flailing, the shotgun splashing as he turned, shock in his eyes, betrayal cutting deeper than the wound. Brian fired again, the second shot to his head, Mike's body going limp, sinking into the murk as Brian held him under, bubbles rising like final breaths. The lake swallowed the evidence, the body weighted with cinder blocks. Brian had brought in his truck, dragged to a remote cove where alligators lurked, the plan to let nature erase the crime. Brian stripped Mike's waders and jacket, tossing them into the shallows for searchers to find, his hands shaking as he drove back to Tallahassee, the shotgun hidden in a toolbox. Denise waited at home, her face composed as Brian arrived, his clothes changed, his story rehearsed. Mike had gone hunting alone, vanished without a trace. She called 911 that evening, her voice breaking as she reported him missing, the search launching at dawn, boats scouring the lake, divers plunging into the cold water, helicopters buzzing overhead. Divers found the waders and jacket days later, Mike's hunting license inside, the assumption immediate, drowning, gators, a tragic accident in the wild. The search gripped Tallahassee, a city of 150,000 where Mike was a local son, his high school football stories still legend. Friends like Scott Dungy, Mike's best man, dove in himself, his boat cutting through the fog, his heart heavy as days turned to weeks. Denise played the grieving widow perfectly, her tears on TV interviews pulling at heartstrings, her pleas for answers drawing donations to a search fund. Brian stood by her, his arm around her shoulders at press conferences, his voice cracking as he recounted their last hunt together months earlier, his guilt buried deep. The lake yielded nothing, the alligators blamed, and by June 2001, a judge declared Mike dead, the insurance payout flowing to Denise, $1.75 million tax-free, her windfall a secret thrill amid the sorrow. She bought a new home, invested in real estate, her life rebuilding as Brian divorced Kathy in 2002, their affair blooming into marriage in 2005. A quiet ceremony with Brienne as flower girl, the past a ghost they ignored. Years passed, the case fading to cold file status, Denise thriving as a high school math teacher and real estate investor, her flips turning profits, her smile bright at PTA meeting. Brian climbed in insurance, his agency expanding, their blended family, Brienne and Brian's 2 kids, a picture of normalcy. But cracks formed, Denise's ambition clashing with Brian's caution, her late nights at open houses fueling jealousy. By 2014, arguments escalated, Denise filing for divorce in 2016, her petition citing irreconcilable differences, her heart set on freedom. Brian, desperate to hold on, snapped on October 31st, 2016, driving to her school, gun in hand, forcing her into his truck at gunpoint, his voice wild as he drove to a remote dirt road, tears streaming as he ranted about betrayal. "If I can't have you, no one can," he screamed. The gun to her head, Denise's mind racing as she talked him down, her calm a shield against the barrel's cold touch. A passerby called 911, deputies arriving to arrest Brian for kidnapping, his confession spilling in the cruiser, not just the abduction, but the murder of Mike 16 years earlier. Brian's arrest cracked the case wide open, his interrogation a floodgate of guilt, the tequila of that morning loosening his tongue as he detailed the plot, the affair, the policy, the shotgun blast on the lake, the cinder blocks sinking Mike's body to the bottom where it stayed hidden. Denise, he claimed, masterminded it, her greed for the payout the spark, her tears a performance for the cameras. Prosecutors pounce, the cold case thawed, divers returning to Lake Seminole with sonar and magnets, pulling up Mike's remains on November 16, 2016. Skeletal but identifiable by dental records. The cinder block still chained to his ankles, the shotgun wound clear in the x-rays. The city gasped, headlines screaming murder plot exposed. Denise arrested on December 19th, her face ashen as deputies cuffed her in front of Brianne. Now 16, her world crumbling again. Brian cut a deal, immunity for the murder in exchange for testimony, his voice breaking in chord as he recounted the shot, the sink, Denise's cold calculation, we'd be together. The Leon County Courthouse packed, the air thick with anticipation as prosecutor Georgia Kappelman laid out the scheme. The affair since 1997, the $1.75 million policy. Brian sold Mike in 2000, the staged drowning, to collect the windfall. Denise, elegant in a navy suit, her hair pulled back, maintained innocence, her lawyers painting Brian as the soul killer, her a victim of his lie. But his testimony was damning. The planning meetings in motels, Denise's research on drowning insurance payouts, the fake search party she orchestrated to sell the accident. Friends testified to her ambition, her complaints about Mike's boring life, her quick pivot to dating Brian post-declaration. The insurance fraud emerged, Denise collecting $2 total, investing in flips that soured, her debts mounting as the marriage to Brian frayed. Jurors saw the greed, the betrayal, returning guilty on first-degree murder and conspiracy on December 14, 2018. Judge James Hankinson sentencing her to life without parole, her face crumpling as Brianne sobbed in the gout. Appeals twisted the knife, the First District Court of Appeals overturning the murder conviction in November 2020 on a technicality. Florida law requiring presence at the crime for first degree, Denise ashore during the shooting. But conspiracy stuck, her resentencing to 30 years in September 2021. A hollow victory. Judge Hankinson calling her cold-blooded as she was led away, her orange jumpsuit a far cry from designer dresses. Brian served 20 years for the kidnapping, his immunity holding, released in 2036, his life a shadow of regret. Brianne, raised by Mike's parents, forged ahead, her father's memory a light in the darkness. Tallahassee whispered of the duck hunter's widow, the lake a grim monument, Mike's boat ramp a plaque of remembrance. Denise, in Lowell Correctional, penned letters of denial, her appeals dragging, the $2 long spent on lawyers and losses. The case, chronicled in Mr. and Mrs. Murder on Hulu in 2025, gripped viewers, the affair's poison as lethal as the shotgun blast, a tale of love turned to greed in the Panhandle's sun. As this story fades, another one waits in the shadows for its turn. The crisp mountain air of Camas, Utah, carried the faint scent of pine and wildflowers as the sun dipped behind the Wasatch Range, painting the sky in strokes of pink and gold. It was March 3rd, 2022, and Eric Richens, a 39-year-old mortgage broker with a boyish grin and a knack for closing deals, poured himself a drink in the kitchen of their sprawling log home on Lower Red Cliffs Drive. His broad shoulders filled out a casual flannel shirt, his dark hair tousled from a day of calls and client meetings, his mind already shifting to family time with his 3 young sons, Weston, 11, Carter, 9, and Hunter, 6, who tumbled in the living room, their laughter echoing off the wooden beam. Eric's life was a testament to hard work, built from humble roots in Ogden to a successful business flipping houses and securing loans, his company a lifeline for families chasing the American dream. But beneath the surface, cracks had formed in his marriage to Corey, a 33-year-old real estate agent and aspiring author whose ambition burned bright but left him feeling like an afterthought. Corey, with her long blonde hair and sharp blue eyes, moved through the kitchen in yoga pants and a sweater, her smile tight as she handed him the cocktail. A Moscow Mule, she said, her special recipe with fresh ginger and lime. Eric took a sip, the tartness hitting his tongue, and pulled her close for a quick kiss, oblivious to the invisible killer dissolving in the copper mug. Their home, a 5,000 square foot haven with vaulted ceilings and a stone fireplace, was a symbol of their shared success, bought in 2015 after years of scraping by. Eric had met Corey in 2009 at a real estate seminar in Park City, her energy and drive drawing him in like a magnet. She was a force. Born in Utah to a middle-class family, she'd hustled through community college, landed a job in marketing, then pivoted to real estate, her charm closing deals that left clients raving. They married in 2011, their wedding a simple affair with mountains as backdrop, and soon the boys came, filling their lives with chaos and joy. But Corey's ambitions grew. House flips in Heber Valley, a dream of building a luxury empire, her nights spent poring over blueprints, while Eric balanced the books, his steady income keeping the lights on. Tension simmered over money, Corey's spending on renovations outpacing profits, Eric quietly maxing credit cards to cover gaps. Friends noticed her restlessness, the way she'd talk endlessly about a $2 million mansion under construction in Wasatch County, a flip she swore would net $12 million. Eric supported her, but privately confided in his sister Katie about the stress, his voice weary on late-night calls. She's going to run us into the ground. That evening, as the boys settled into bed, Eric felt the first twinge, a warmth spreading from his chest, his vision blurring at the edges. He laughed it off at first, blaming the drink, but by 9 p.m., he was on the couch, sweat beading on his forehead, his breaths coming in shallow gasps. Corey hovered, her face a mask of concern, dialing 911 as she stroked his hair, her voice steady but edged with panic. "My husband, he's not breathing right," she told the dispatcher, the line crackling with urgency. Paramedics arrived in minutes, their sirens cutting through the quiet mountain night, rushing Eric to Intermountain Park City Hospital, where doctors fought to stabilize him. His heart raced erratically, his blood pressure plummeting, his body convulsing as if poisoned from within. Kuri arrived in a flurry, her hands clasped in prayer. The boys left with a sitter as she paced the ER waiting room, her mind racing with calculations. Eric slipped into a coma by midnight, machines beeping a grim rhythm, his family gathering, Katie arriving with tears, his parents holding vigil, unaware the cocktail held 5 times a lethal dose of fentanyl, andanos, a synthetic opioid so potent a speck could stop a heart. Eric Richens never woke. At 7:42 a.m. on March 4th, after hours of futile resuscitation, doctors pronounced him dead, his body ravaged by organ failure, his toxicology screen later revealing the fentanyl's deadly signature. Kuri collapsed into Katie's arms, her sobs raw and convincing, the hospital chapel filled with her whispered prayers for her boys. The news spread like wildfire through Camas, a tight-knit enclave of 2,500, where everyone knew the Richenses, the successful couple with the perfect family, their home a showcase of log beams and granite counters. Friends rallied, bringing casseroles and hugs, Kuri's face pale as she thanked them, her eyes red, but her resolve steel. Behind the grief, questions stirred. Eric had texted his brother days earlier. If anything happens to me, it's her. A Valentine's Day illness in February, where he'd vomited violently after a sandwich Kuri made, blaming food poisoning but whispering to a friend, "I think my wife tried to poison me." Kuri had dismissed it as stress, but Eric's wariness grew, his will quietly updated in January to name Katie trustee, removing Kuri as beneficiary. The days blurred into a haze of funeral preparations, the boys clinging to Kuri as she planned a service at the local chapel, her black dress a stark contrast to her usual vibrant scarves. Eric's casket, oak with silver handles, sat open for viewing, his face peaceful under the soft lights, mourners filing past with whispers of shock. Kuri stood tall, accepting condolences, her hand on Weston's shoulder as he placed a toy car in the coffin, a symbol of their daddy's love for building. But whispers rippled. Eric's family noticed her quick pivot to estate matters, calling the insurance company the day after his death to inquire about policy. Prosecutors later revealed she'd secretly taken out 4 life insurance policies on him between 2015 and 2017, totaling nearly $2 without his knowledge, the premiums siphoned from joint accounts. On January 1st, 2022, she'd changed the beneficiary to herself, but Eric caught it, switching it back to his business partner days before he died. The payout, if she'd succeeded, would have erased her debts. Over $3 million from failed house flips, loans for the Wasatch Mansion, credit cards maxed on renovations that never profited. Kuri's grief played out publicly, her Instagram posts filled with heartfelt tributes, photos of Eric with the boys at ski slopes, captions reading "My forever love, watch over us," but private. Her actions raised flags. She closed on the $3.90 million mansion the day after his death, signing papers with a steady hand, her signature on the dotted line as paramedics still echoed in her mind. The insurance claims followed, her calls to agents polished, her voice breaking just enough to tug at heartstrings. Summit County Sheriff's deputies, tipped by Eric's family, opened a quiet probe in April, their notebooks filling with inconsistencies. Corey's purchase of fentanyl-laced oxycodone from her housekeeper, Carmen Marcella, a moonlighting dealer. The Valentine's sandwich spiked with the drug. Eric's hives and nausea, a near miss. Marcella later confessed to selling Corey dozens of pills, Corey asking for stronger fentanyl after Eric survived the first attempt. Her texts to the housekeeper casual, need more for pain. The deputies dug deeper, searching Corey's phone, finding Google searches for lethal dose fentanyl and undetectable poisons weeks before Eric's death. By May 2023, the evidence mounted like a storm cloud. Affidavits painting Corey as a calculating widow whose grief masked greed. She was arrested on May 8 at her Camas home. Deputies in tactical vests cuffing her as the boys watched from upstairs, their confusion turning to tears. The charge, aggravated murder, with counts of attempted homicide, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and forgery. Bail denied. Corey led away in tears, her face pale under the flashing lights, the community stunned by the woman they'd seen as a devoted mom. Her self-published children's book, Are You With Me?, released in March 2023, a tale of a father as an angel watching his sons, became a flashpoint, prosecutors calling it a cynical ploy for sympathy. Corey promoting it on TV with a broken voice. Eric's death inspired this, to help kids grieve. The dedication read to my amazing husband, her words dripping irony as the book sold thousands, proceeds funding her defense. Summit County Jail held Corey in isolation, her orange jumpsuit a far cry from designer dresses, her nights filled with whispers of strategy with lawyers. The preliminary hearing in June 2023 laid bare the horror. Toxicology reports showing 7,300 grams of fentanyl per milliliter in Eric's blood, 5 times lethal. Marcella's testimony of sales. Corey's casual chats about helping with pain. Katie Richens Benson took the stand, her voice steady through rage, recounting Eric's fears. He changed his will because he knew she was dangerous. The prenup, signed in 2011, entitled Corey to assets only if they divorced, not died. A detail she allegedly forged documents to exploit. Corey's defense painted her as a grieving widow, the fentanyl accidental from her own back pain meds. But the judge saw through it, binding her over for trial. The mansion flip collapsed, creditors circling, her empire crumbling as the boys stayed with Eric's family, their world shattered. Corey's story gripped Utah, the quiet mountain town of Camas, a reluctant spotlight, locals gathering at coffee shops to dissect the betrayal. Her book tour halted, copies pulled from shelves, her image shifting from inspirational mom to cold-blooded killer. In March 2024, new charges dropped. Attempted murder for the Valentine's sandwich, insurance fraud for false claims post-death, mortgage forgery for faked loans on the mansion. The pattern of unlawful activity charge tied it all. Prosecutors alleging a scheme years in the making. Secret policies, spiked drinks, a widow's payout to fund her dreams. Corey, studying law books in her cell, plotted her defense, claiming Eric's death a tragic accident, her tears for the cameras a performance honed over years. But the evidence whispered otherwise. Texts to Marcella for more fentanyl. Searches for how to kill with fentanyl undetectable. Eric's final words to a friend. If I die, it's her. The boys shielded from the storm. The boys shielded from the storm. Grew under Katie's care. Their father's photo on the mantle. Stories of his kindness filling quiet evening. Weston asked once, his voice small, "Did Mommy hurt Daddy?" Katie held him close, her answer a promise of truth someday. Corey's trial loomed in 2025, her lawyers fighting for bail, her book a bestseller in true crime circles, readers torn between pity and revulsion. Park City's elite whispered about the couple they'd envied, the perfect life, a facade of fraud and fentanyl. Eric's grave in the Ogden Cemetery bloomed with wildflowers, his headstone simple. Beloved father, gone too soon. Corey's cell offered no such peace, her ambitions reduced to appeals and shadows. The cocktail's poison, a legacy of greed that claimed a husband and shattered a family. See you in the next video.